Good day, Doctor. We are from Group 3 and are going to present about the financial fraud activities of Leong Trading in Singapore. Before we start, let me introduce our group members who are Elmond Juani, Hussin, Muhammad Naufal bin Norasikin, Muhammad Ikmal bin Muhammad, and Rabiatul Athirah Binti Abdul Rahman. So now we'll start our presentation with the introduction about background of Leong Trading.
Good day to you, Dr. Raimi. My name is Elmond Juani, and I will introduce you about Leong Trading Company. So, Leong Trading is the one powerful name and famous name in the world of oil trade, or at least it was. Leong was owned by Singapore billionaire named Lim Un Quinn when he started this business in 1963 at the age of 20 with nothing but a single truck. We used to deliver diesel to fishermen. Then, Hin Leong became the largest independent oil trader in Singapore. But how? Okay, I will talk about the background or a little bit history about Hin Leong's success. So, in the 1950s, Chinese immigrant named Lim Un Quinn, also known as OK Lim, who came from China and moved to Singapore and founded Hin Leong as one man, one truck firm with him as the only operator. He bought fuel, diesel, oil in bulk, divided into smaller quantities, and then sold it to taxi, ship, and bus firms to make money. He was unaware at the time, but this was the beginning of the Hin Leong that was known as the oil trading empire. So, because of the geographic and strategic location, Singapore began to develop into a trading hub for the region in the 1960s. Tons of ships were coming in and out of the country using Singapore's port to start over, and who was at the center of it all? Hin Leong, of course. This really cemented the Hin Leong name in the oil trading and supply industry, and OK Lim built his fleet of tank trucks in Singapore over the years and incorporated Hin Leong in 1973 as an oil trading company, followed by Ocean Tankers in 1978 as a ship chartering and management company, creating his own ranks to reach his history. So, Hin Leong also combined with other companies which include Ocean Tankers, Universal Group Holdings, and Shihe Investment PT Ltd. The nature of business of the company. So, the business of Hin Leong is basically buying and selling oil from the beginning with only a truck, and then suddenly there were more and more trucks he invested, and also ships that allowed this company to go far all over the region to buy and sell oil and become more functioning as a fully integrated supply system. This company includes trades of oil and gas such as diesel, petroleum products. Moreover, the company also provides transportation service and products like oil, lubricant, grease, and diesel in addition to storage, terminaling, trucking, and logistical service for vessels. In Leong Trading, clients are served globally. However, in 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic was affecting business all over the world, including Hin Leong Trading, the company then filed for bankruptcy protection. But how in the world this successful company, this excellent company from supplying fuel to all the vessels that came into Singapore ports to going bankrupt will be discussed by our next presenter. Thank you.
Next, I will present about scandal of Hin Leong Trading. First of all, what is financial fraud? Financial fraud or financial scandal is typically defined as an intentional deception involving financial transactions with the intention of gaining personal profit. There are some companies involved in or implicated in a financial scandal. In April 2020, Hin Leong Trading Ltd, Singapore's largest oil trading company, filed for bankruptcy protection. Lim O Quinn, most often known as OK Lim HLT, was one of the dealing oil lead dealers in Asia. Major banks ranging from JP Morgan Chase and Co. to HSBC Holdings plc requested prompt repayment of hundreds of millions of dollars in loans. The Monetary Authority of Singapore penalized Lim On Cheng, LOK's brother and LOK's other daughter Lim Hui Yi in 2012 for insider trading in the shares of Singapore Petroleum Company Limited and Keppel Corporation Limited. LOC profited $3.818 million on his insider transactions and paid a $9.597 million civil penalty, while LHY earned $896,340 million and a $2.241 million civil penalty. Hin Leong presented a vastly misleading picture of its financial statement to external parties and deceived its lender into extending financing. The alleged fraud at HLT including account manipulation, forged documents, and fraudulent profits, including the overstatement of derivatives trading gains and inventories. They admitted that he was aware of the accumulated futures trading losses in around $808 million over 10 years. HLT is accused of creating fictitious derivatives and trading gains to conceal losses from futures trading. Allocate alleged asked the finance staff to cover the losses in the books of HLT to represent positive equity, allegedly altered its account receivables and perhaps inflated their value by at least $2.23 billion as at 31st October 2019. HLT also have overstated its inventory by at least $800 million by including a significant amount of inventory that may not have belonged to the company. HLT obtained bank funding using financing schemes based on selling and repurchasing cargo at a loss. HLT also purchased cargo from multiple vendors using 273 outstanding letters of credit lines from 23 banks, contributing to the $3.5 billion liabilities. That's all from me. I pass presentation to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to the doctor and everyone. My name is Mohd Ikmal bin Hussin and the number metric 280131, and I'm going to continue the presentation about the effect for the financial scandal to the auditors. So as far we know that the financial scandal is the one of the accounting issue that will give the detrimental for the short and the long term one that will give the impact for the various parties, such as for the investor, for the creditor, for the user, and so much more. And the company also will not give the true color of the financial statement that we give for the losers of the money, especially for the investor when they are making the investment in the companies. And this scandal also will give the impact for the auditors when they are raising up their risk, which is the audit risk. They will going to be failure on not to detect any of the material misstatement, such as for the fraud, error, and so much more. They will give the lead to them to the legal liability. So there are three effects of the financial scandal to the auditors based on the Hin Leong trading from the Singapore. The first one, which is the quality level of the auditors' professionalism and the ethic is affected. So we know that the auditors have their own purpose to inspecting any of the financial report and the transaction record to measure the amount balance to be more reliable, more accurate, and so much more. And this also become of their objective to detect any of the materially misstatement was arise. And to measure the amount balance to be more accurate and more reliable, the auditors can be accompanied by the supporting of the various of the document, such as for the check and for the invoice and so much more from the management and the other parties in the corporation. But for somehow, the failure of the accuracy and the violation will be occur when they actually from the transaction record has been the manipulating, been falsifying, and the omitting the appropriate amount, which is they have the intentionally from the companies for their benefit for themselves. So we can take the example from the Straits Times on the 2021, which is the Lim On Kui which is the founder of the oil trader Singapore of the Hin Leong, which is sued with the Hin Leong auditors, which is Deloitte, that because the auditors unable to catch any of the financial irregularities and the materially misstatement. So for the auditors, they are actually only giving the unqualified opinion audit for the 5 years in a row, which is from the 2014 until 2019, including of the occurrence of the overstated asset amount. So the result and the effect for the auditors, which is they are led into the fair accusation. That's the causes for the financial statement in the Hin Leong were being gravely misinformed for the user for the 5 years in a row. And the quality level of the auditor professionalism and the ethics being also were affected for them. So the second one, which is the public trust in the auditing profession, is affected. So we know that all of the companies should to be followed by the auditing standard that have been established, such as for the Malaysian Financial Reporting Standard (MFRS) as the guidance for all the companies to make the systematical for the financial statement. And the completeness also as the one of the elements that should to be emphasized for all auditors in the aspect for the audit session to ensure of the transaction, all amount, and all the balance should to be tally in the disclosure amount for the many components. And they also need to prepare for the report, audit opinion, and audited financial statement. But for somehow, for the completeness actually cannot achieve that because have the intentionally were omitted for the transaction and the record in order to demonstrate for the company increased financial stability and the lack of any of the obvious fault that causes the auditors were actually cannot to detect any of the material misstatements such as for the fraud, error, and so much more. So we can take the example from the Financial Times 2019, which is the Leong Queen have been inculpated with the 105 charge as the causes for the forgery of the valuable security. So from this case, where actually the Hin Leong, they were hiding of their real of the amount of the profit and loss, which is they get loss for the Singapore dollar 800 million. And the allegation will be linked to the limb as being charged of the defrauding from the number of the bank, such as for the NZ and the Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation and so much more. And they give the result and the effect also for the auditors, which is they give the fair accusation such as for the legal liability. As the causes, they were actually cannot to detect any of the serious financial irregularities. Hence, of the public trust for the auditing procession of this case were also affected. So the third and the last one, which is the reduction credibility of the auditors. So we know that the requirement of the auditors on the planning and the carrying out of the audit to gain a reasonable assurance, which is to make sure the financial statement in the companies are based on the true and fair view, which is free from the material misstatement, such as for the fraud, errors, and much more, and including also the fictitious of the journal entries to intest for the company to demonstrate for the company increased financial stability. That can lead into two scenarios. The first one, which is the understated amount for the liability and the expense, and the second one, which is the overstated amount for the asset and the revenue. So if the auditors do not take their responsibility more seriously, which is it can causes the auditors will not comply with and not following the audit procedure that should to be followed in order to allow for the audit strategy in more effective and more efficient manners. So we can see from the cases from the Straits Times 2020 was shown that the Leong Queen and his two sons were being charged by the judicial manager, as we can see the name of the judicial manager, to conceal of the trading losses and the overstated of the amount of the inventory. And the accusation was shown that the Hin Leong trading will be deceiving for the external parties for the financial situation, and they're being actually bankrupt since 31 October 2012. And the result and the effect for the auditors will actually not give any fault and the failure during the audit report, since they were comply with the law of the ethics of the auditing, that actually they are able to manage for the credibility of the auditors. So if the auditors will not actually to follow with the law of the ethics of the auditing, that will make causes the reduction credibility the auditors may be occur. So that is all from me of the part for the effect of the financial scandal for the auditors based from the Hin Leong trading. So I will pass to the next presenter for the next part. Thank you.
So now we'll continue with the part of involvement or role of auditors in the case. First of all, auditors should report errors and fraud. The purpose of audit is to provide user of financial statement assurance that the financial have been prepared fairly, considering all material respect and in accordance with the applicable financial reporting standard. As a result, auditors have their responsibility to detect and disclose any material misstatement, errors, or fraud done by the company, and they should express the information in a manner that is professional according to the applied standard. In this case, the defendant is Deloitte, which is the auditor of Hin Leong for at least 16 years. The legal action was felt that Deloitte had failed to uncover the irregularities and material misstatements that seriously deceived several banks and financial institutions about the status of the financial situation. In this case, Deloitte allowed Hin Leong financial statement to look fine, although actually Hin Leong was unable to pay its own debt since 2012, and the assets mentioned were overstated. But Deloitte had provided unqualified opinions on Hin Leong financial statement from 2014 to 2019. Deloitte would have been able to identify the major misstatement if they had correctly conducted the financial statement audit. In this instance, auditors have failed to do their role or responsibility to ensure the accuracy of its client financial performance, failing to notify regulators of the suspected fraud and instead promoting the client's interests, and also sending a statement to investment and banks stating that Hin Leong Trading had no financial statement. Secondly, auditors should provide reasonable assurance. The exercise of due professional care enables the auditor to achieve reasonable assurance concerning whether a financial statement is free of material misstatement, whether caused by error or fraud, or whether any major weakness exists at the date of management evaluation. The independent auditor's objective is to acquire acceptable evidential material to give him or her with a reasonable basis for formulating a conclusion. But in this case, Deloitte had issued unmodified opinions, although trading loss of $808 million were not reflected and the assets were overstated in the financial statement. So, Deloitte had raised some concerns. First, the opinion given could be interpreted as a guarantee that Hin Leong finance were in order. The auditor's opinion has led to various banks and financial institutions to have relied on the financing and been misled into believing there was no problem with Hin Leong financial health and state of affairs. Therefore, Deloitte auditors has not done enough testing in order to gain that level of reasonable assurance and has not obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence to reduce audit risk to an acceptable low level.
Next, I'll present about the professional skepticism. This international standard of auditing, ISA 200, basically demands the use of professional skepticism as a technique of increasing the auditor's capacity to recognize risk of significant misstatement and to react to the risk detected. Professional skepticism and basic ethical principle of impartiality and independence in auditing are strongly intertwined. Professional skepticism includes being aware of a few things, such as audit, evidence that conflict with other audit evidence obtained, information casting doubt on the validity of documents and inquiries to be used as audit evidence, circumstances that could indicate possible fraud, and situations that point to the need for audit processes beyond those specified by ISA. In this case, Deloitte was the auditor of Hin Leong for about 16 years since 2012. The auditor has been accused by the company for failing to detect irregularities and material misstatement after more than a decade auditing the company financial statement and led up to the omission of the recording of the loss of 808 million. However, Deloitte clarified for not finding any irregularities. In fact, they declined the statement and defended their company as having carried out the highest quality of audit and compliance. However, this is contradicted with their defended statement when many fabricated documents created by Hin Leong have been revealed by the court, which include fake trades and dubious financing to cover the company loss. The scenario showed that Deloitte was purely applying the professional skepticism that led to continued hypocrisy by Hin Leong before the scandal leak. Last but not least, professional judgment. The use of professional judgment by the auditor is also connected to professional skepticism. Professional judgment is defined as the application of the cumulative knowledge and experience gained through relevant accounting or auditing training, while utilizing the ethical standards to produce informed decisions about the courses of action that are appropriate in specific circumstances, such as an audit mission or the accounting of economic transaction, while adhering to accounting principle. Therefore, there are five basic actions to be done by the auditor to achieve the professional judgment standard. The five actions are to identify and define the issue, gather the fact and information, and identify the relevant literature. Auditor needs to be thorough while examining potential alternatives to perform the analysis. Next, the auditor need to identify alternative, make the decision along with review and complete the documentation and rationale for the conclusion. In this case, Hin Leong accused Deloitte for auditing and issued an unqualified opinion from 2014 to 2019. Additionally, the lawsuit contended that the assets indicate were exaggerated and that the company was in default due to its inability to pay its own debt since at least 2012. Later, Hin Leong alleged that Deloitte knew or should have known that these banks and financial institutions were intended users of the plaintiff audited financial statement and that the statement led to various banks and financial institutions being grossly misled as to the financial health and situation. In retrospect, it meant that Deloitte had essentially allowed the oil company financial statement to appear to be in order, while other banks and institutions relied on this. And now they have been dubbed as they continue to finance the company, even though they are in not good enough shape to repay the money. These legal matters demonstrated the obvious issues with misreading firm health and then doing nothing about it, as several banks and financial institutions as well as the company itself were affected. Deloitte failed to act urgently to correct the situation's mismanagement for years, which allowed additional money to be dispersed illegally before it finally collapsed. In the end, Deloitte Auditing is at fault and is facing the necessary reasonable accusation.
In a nutshell, we can conclude that everyone has their own responsibility, whether it is the management side or the auditor side in conducting their works and having integrity to do an honest job, which is auditors to prevent making an unqualified opinion on the materially misstated financial statements. And for management is to take care the internal control in making true and fair view of the financial statements so that the users can rely on the audited financial statement so that they not having any losses when doing an investment as a shareholders and giving loan as a bank. What we covered in this assignment is that the involvement of auditors is very important, especially in the Hin Leong case, which they should report errors and fraud so management can do a correction according to the standard and conduct an audit properly. But in Hin Leong case, they did not do a correction and not report the errors and frauds. Then auditors only provide reasonable assurance and not an absolute assurance because the auditor's opinion is only based on the test they did and not as 100% sure that the financial statement is true and fair view. Furthermore, auditors must be professional and skepticism to the financial statements provided by the management. They must note that certain area in the financial statements could have materially misstated, especially in time of pandemic of COVID-19. But in Hin Leong case, the auditors were not professional and skepticism and formed an unqualified opinion report to the financial statements for the several years until the years of COVID-19 in 2020. Also, Auditors in the case are not professional in judgment related to the skepticism, and in the end, Deloitte's auditing is incorrect in reading the health of the company and leads to reasonable accusation for not conduct an audit properly. So, our hope is that a case like this will be more of a lesson for the upcoming auditors or the current auditors so that they can do an audit properly and appropriately and seriously and according to the standard, therefore will provide a correct opinion on the financial statements that is highly reliable to the users. Thank you.
So that's all from our group. Thank you, Doctor.